All right, hello and welcome to the Way of the Ace podcast. My name is Christian James. I'm a 5'9" outside hitter from the UK. I started this podcast specifically to help people like myself, undersized volleyball players, and new volleyball players who are looking to get into the sport but are finding it particularly difficult. I've been playing around 5 years now, and it has not been the easiest ride. I'm not sure why my voice sounds really strange today. I don't know whether it sounds weird on camera or anything. But yeah, I've got a new background. I feel like I've got a new background every single episode. Reason being, I'm currently in South Korea. This guy goes to South Korea and then lets everybody know about it in every single post ever. Makes it his whole personality. But it's the truth. I'm currently studying in a summer school. We've got about a week and a half left before all the final assignments are due in. And then once all that's done, I'm clear and I've got another week to spend in South Korea. So that's going to be super duper fun. But we've got to keep this podcast running. And so I've got a special little spicy episode for you today. If you see me look down here, it's because I've got some notes down here. And today we're going to be talking about how to own being short in what is considered a tall person's sport. I remember when I was first getting into the sport, I had a lot of people tell me, like, why are you getting into volleyball? Like, you're very short. You know, not you're too short, but you're very short. It's like, why are you wanting to play volleyball? You know, and that can be quite discouraging. I don't know whether anybody else has experienced that. And throughout my entire time as a volleyball player, I've been constantly battling my height and fighting something that I can't control, when that should be something that you own. It should be something that you embody as a part of your identity and then carry that into your play. There are so many advantages you have as a short volleyball player, and it just took me so long to realise that. So that's what I want to do with today's podcast. I want to help you overcome your height. I've had a couple of comments on my Instagram as well about people who... I'll make a post about like a short hitter. Short little plug. If you haven't followed my Instagram, follow that. I dropped some sauce on there. But I get some people on my short hitter posts who comment and say, yeah, but what if I'm 5'3"? What if I'm 5'4"? You know, what if I'm 5'5", right? What if you're like super duper short? Well, you know, there are things that everybody can do. There are people shorter than that who play volleyball. For God's sake, I see some people with like 40-inch verticals and they're like, I don't know, 4'11", 5 foot on my For You page. They're jumping like this. They're jumping like that. So what I say to that is, why not you? You know what I mean? Why are you in my comments right now saying, but what if I'm this? When you could be working towards it. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could be working towards your goal. And so it just shows that's not me digging at anyone either. That's not meant to put anyone down for not working towards something like this, because it is genuinely a difficult roadblock, a difficult mental block to overcome. You know, like I say, I struggled with it for 5 years, and that's why I'm sat in front of this camera right now telling you how to overcome it. So leading on quite naturally from that is, you need to get out of your head. Why are you so wrapped up in your head? Why is your identity tied with your height? It's like your height is your identity in this sport. I guess as people, it's very difficult to detach from that when you're in an environment surrounded by tall people, where being tall is this like trump card almost. You know, you close in on yourself and you feel super vulnerable because you know you can't identify with that. It's very, very difficult spot to be in. And so all of your mistakes, if it's a taller team, for example, and I've caught myself doing this so many times, it's like, oh, well, if I was just their height, then I would be as good as they are, right? And that can be a genuinely vicious cycle that you can get into. It can be really, really self-destructive. But it's completely natural. You know, when you're in that situation and you're surrounded by people who value height and you don't have it, you naturally want to close in on yourself. You naturally want to feel, you want to feel comforted by something. And I guess that's what being short has become for a lot of people. It's become a limiting factor, but a comforting one. You know, you can feel comforted almost by the fact that you're shorter than other people and you don't have expectations placed on you. And like I say, that can be an extremely destructive thing. And so get out of your head, really sort of try and detach from that identity of a short hitter and think, well, what can I do? I'm just a volleyball player like everyone else. If I put the ball on the floor, then what makes me different to the people who are 30 centimeters taller than me? And you need to have that sort of detachment. So get out of your head. You need to stop blaming things that you can't control and get excited about the prospect of being this undersized hitter. I've said this about a billion times already, but you need to be able to understand what it is that your specific skill set brings to the game. What is the reason that you're on the court right now? Because there might be a 190 centimeter tall guy who can bounce it 3 meters, shake it off, doesn't even crack a smile because this is just business as usual for him. You probably can't do that. Hell, I can't do that. I struggle with that. And so what can I do? What do I bring to the table? Well, as a shorter player, I'm more versatile. I'm closer to the ground, so I can have better defense. I can have better setting hands. These are things that you should be getting excited about, because these are the things that the big, tall, powerhouse players don't think about. That's your way in. Those are the things that you can improve easily compared to them. They don't want to spend time setting because they can bounce a ball 3 meters. Well, they're just going to be played middle for their whole life, or outside, or opposite for their whole life. They don't need to learn how to defend or pass because the coach is going to put them in because they hit harder, and so they become complacent. But you're a shorter player, and you want to put the work in. You have to put the work in if you want to get to the level that you want to get to. And so focus on the things that you can do and get excited by that. Especially if you do want to be one of these players who bounce 3 meters every single swing. It's exciting to think that you can do that. There are people that can do that, so why not you? So just think how cool it's going to be when you're able to bounce 3 meters. Think of all the looks. We like to say that we don't care about what people think, but I care about what people think. And I especially care about what people think on the volleyball court. When I see people looking at me and thinking that I'm a really good player, that naturally spurs me on to play better. And so if you're similar to me, think about all the looks you're going to get. When you can spike really fucking hard, you get people coming up to you and asking you, holy shit, your vertical's insane. You can spike so hard. You can bounce so high. All these things, that's genuinely exciting and rewarding as well for somebody who's been playing volleyball for so long and who envied someone like myself so many years ago. That's a genuinely rewarding thing. So stop defining yourself by your height. Okay, stop going into my comments and saying, oh, but what if I'm 5'3" and beating yourself up for something that you can't even control? So wake up a little bit. Think about, well, what can I do? Have this sort of mindset that you can work around things. Okay, let's stop defining ourselves by our height, guys. Come on, it's not the end of the world, especially if you're playing volleyball for fun. We're not all playing for glory. I don't play for glory. I play because I love the game. I love the game to the bottom of my heart. I experience no joy quite like it. It's an incredible experience. And so why am I getting wrapped up about my height? If it brings me that happiness. So let's think about that. Let's think about something else as well. Realize that any player is only as good as the work they put in. So these people that you're envying, these super tall players who are bouncing the ball 3 meters, who are incredibly strong and powerful and blow your team's blocks apart with massive spikes, and you're thinking, damn, if I was as tall as them, I'd do the same thing. I think that sometimes, I make jokes about it. My university team got decimated by this one guy in first year. He must have been 180 plus centimeters tall, and and he was just crushing balls. He was this massive guy. They gave the ball to him on every point. He was the only good player on their team, and yet we got smashed by them. We got completely smashed by them. And I remember joking with my teammates afterwards, like if I was as big as he was, if I could jump as high as he could, if I could, be as tall as he was, then I'd probably do the same fucking thing, right? But it's a really destructive mindset, because you see that one game, you see that one point, you see that one, even just training spike, and you think, damn, I'd be able to do that if I was like them. But you don't see any of the work that they've put in outside the court, off the court. You don't see the years, the hours, the days of work that they've put in. That's a really strange order to say that in. Hours, days, years worth of work that they've put in before this moment. There are so many moments where they have probably struggled. They probably felt clunky on the court or something like that. Just overcoming some sort of mental block, overcoming some sort of training block. All of these issues that you run into as a player and you consistently overcome, and eventually you get to a point where people look at you and go, damn, if I was as tall as he was, I would be as good as he is, right? All of that work completely undermined by jealousy from somebody else. That is a cycle, and it's human nature. It is human nature, and like I say, I do this too. I'm also guilty of this. It's not like I'm, this saint. All of the stuff that I talk about is specifically from me. It's from my memory. But you need to let that go. If you're gonna make it in this sport, if you're gonna achieve your goals in this sport, you need to let go of that mindset of, oh yeah, if I'd be able to do it, because they put in so much work that you don't see. Hours off the court matter too. Years worth of experience matter too. You see one moment, you see one game, and you get bitter about it because you want to protect your own mental. You want to protect yourself. So you go, oh yeah, well, if I was as big as that, I would be able to do that too. But it's not that simple. It's not that simple. And so start putting in your own time off the court. Start working on things, because that's what they did to get to the place where they want to be. It's one thing being tall, but being tall is a tool in a volleyball player's toolbox. Okay, and you've got so many different tools, you've got different types of shots, you've got different aspects of your game. Being tall is just one of them tools. It's a pretty big fucking tool. It's like it's like an impressive tool. It's like the hammer. When you think of a tool, you think of a hammer. Maybe a saw. I don't know. I'm not a handyman. I'm not good with my hands. Let's say a hammer, right? So it's a pretty useful and versatile tool, but it's not going to build you a house. You need to work on other pieces of your game, other aspects of your game, and being tall it doesn't change that. It makes things come easier. Don't get me wrong. It's pretty easy. It's easier to build a house if you've got a nice, fancy hammer, but it's not going to make the journey easy on its own. You're still going to have to put in that work. You're still going to have to put those hours in the weight room. You're still going to have to put those hours in training. You're still going to have to actively engage with your coach. That doesn't even factor in the relationship with your teammates. All of these things still need to be cultivated. And so let's stop looking at tall players with contempt and start looking at them with awe, because they're not good because they're tall. They're good because they put the work in outside of the court. Realize that. And that should be a really inspiring thing, because you can put the hours in too, if you really wanted to. Or you can sit and lament about how you're super short and how the world is against you and how you weren't born for this sport or whatever. Do you. I know what I'd rather do. And that kind of leads into my next point about non-negotiable: train your vertical. please put the hours in the weight room. Please train your vertical, learn how to train your vert. My page specifically helps you train your vert. And so if you're following me on Instagram, how many plugs can I fit into one podcast? If you're following me on Instagram, have a look at some of my stuff. I've got some stuff on plyos. I've got some stuff on other vert training things. Or educate yourself. TikTok, YouTube, all great places to learn how to train your vertical. It's how I learned specifically, and so just get started. Even if you don't know how to train your vertical specifically, just getting your strength numbers up. Just get stronger. Getting stronger will solve most of your problems. I got to a 35-inch vertical without knowing how to train my vertical. And so you can get pretty fit and bounce pretty fucking high even without that basic vert training knowledge. You don't have to be some guru. Just go in the weight room, know how to progressively overload, start training properly, and most of your problems are going to be solved. You don't need a ridiculously high vertical. I mean, the shorter you are, the higher you probably need to jump. So factor that in. If you're 5'3", you're probably going to need to jump pretty high, but you can get by with a relatively small vertical compared to what's out there right now. The vertical world record has just been broken. Congratulations to Ethan Pimstone. That is an incredible achievement. 52.5 inches. If you haven't seen it, check it out on Instagram. It's super cool. But you don't need like a 52-inch vert to play volleyball and to be competent. I remember specifically there was one guy, and we called him Kuba. He was Polish, a very rotund fellow, to put it nicely, and he was by far one of the best players on the court, the best player on the court. So versatile. His defense was amazing, his setting was amazing, and his attacking was absolutely lethal. He was an outside hitter, and when I tell you, he barely could jump off the ground. He had no vert, but could bounce that shit. He wasn't even that tall either. I want to say 5'10", 5'11", not crazy tall, and he must have had a 20-inch vertical because he was so big. You can't get off the ground, but he was just so techie, and being Polish probably had something to do with it. You Poles are insane at the game, but yeah, he was incredible, and so you don't need a massive vertical. Just start putting in some strength work, maybe some power work and some plyos outside, maybe buy a skipping rope, something like that. Something simple, and just get your numbers up as much as you can. A couple years worth of training, of strength training, outside of your hours actually on the court, because that's what increases your vertical the most, especially in the early days. Learning how to jump properly. That's where most of my vert came from. Just practicing the two-step approach. That's where most of my vert initially came from, and then the rest of it was just from, I think, probably maturing as a person, as a man. I'm 20 years old now. That probably did something in it, and then weight training, of course, and then those two factors. Now I'm at 35, or probably more. I think a little bit more now. I'm not too sure how much, what my vert is right now. I've not tested. Plan on testing it when I get back though, so stick around. So yeah, get in the weight room. Super duper important. And I guess my final point for this podcast is realize it's going to take time. I mentioned it at the start of this podcast, but I've been playing volleyball for 5 or 6 years now. And my biggest gains as a player came 8 months ago in October of 2025. So I started playing in 2020, sort of late 2020, I think. It was after the first lockdown. And then after the first lockdown, just before the second lockdown, that was roughly when I started. And I'm only just able to hit at a competent level as of October 2025. So 4 years in the making. And I'm 5'9". And I also took a year out. So let's think about 1.5, 2 years before you're going to see the results that you're really hoping for. If you're disciplined, if you put in the hours outside of training, if you do all the things that I've said in this podcast and the stuff that I say on my Instagram, that makes three plugs. If you do all that stuff, then yeah, 1.5, 2 years. It's going to take time. It's just how it works. With volleyball, you only get a small fraction of a second to touch that ball, and what happens in that fraction of a second determines whether the ball goes flying out or whether it bounces 3 meters. And so learning how to control that 2 seconds that you've got on a ball per game is difficult. It's hard. It takes time. It takes adaptation. And so let's stop getting wrapped up in these ridiculous time frames, And you might see some people join your club and get really, really good, really, really fast, and you're like, what the fuck? You feel intimidated, almost. It's not something to be intimidated by. Everybody is on their own journey, and your height makes it more difficult. And I realise that sort of goes back on what I said earlier about not getting wrapped up in your height. But it is the truth. It's not something to get wrapped up on, but it is the truth that it's going to be difficult for you. It's going to be more difficult for you than it would be if you were taller. But like I say, that isn't something to get super duper wrapped up on. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. My girlfriend called me, bless her. It's not something to get wrapped up on, but realise it is going to take time, and it's going to take a little while for you to see the results that you're after. Everything that's worth having is going to take longer than you can even imagine, but that's what makes it so sweet. So keep putting in the hours after training. Keep asking your coach questions. All this stuff is super duper important for your development as a player, and your progress is going to be 1% every single day, but put in that work over the years, putting that work over the weeks and the months and the years, and I promise you will get to where you want to go. You will get there, but it's going to take time. And just have this mindset of constant improvement, being able to detach from the outcome as well, and fall in love with the journey of getting better, fall in love with the game again. Let's not get wrapped up in our height and learn to enjoy the game for what it is and to love the game for what it is. That is what's going to make the most difference. And the time's going to fly by, I promise you. But that time is going to happen regardless of what you do. It's still going to take time. And so that is my advice for how to detach from your height as an undersized player in what's considered a tall man's sport. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope it was useful. Again, comment, not again, I've not said this at all. Comment if you have any questions. I love seeing comments, and I love answering questions. And so drop your comments below. I'll be sure to get back to everybody who replies. And if you genuinely enjoyed the podcast and found it useful, either share it with someone or rate it 5 stars so that everybody who comes across my page thinks it's also going to be valuable. That'd be a huge help. Thank you very much for listening to this podcast. This has been the Way of the Ace podcast by Christian James. I'm Christian James, and I will catch you in the next one. Enjoy any volleyball that you've got coming up over the next however long before my next one, hopefully a week, and I will see you later.